Nikipedia. I'm Claire. Today, August 24th, is the 502nd anniversary of the St. Bartholomew's Day Massacre, a turning point for the Huguenots. Most people in the diaspora don't really think of this date as part of their story anymore, so we're here to talk about what it started and how it shaped the last 500 years. Nick, would you like me to give you a crash course? What happened and how that fits into the story of your ancestors?
Yes, that would be good. Particularly, even though this is what 1572 was a major event. I don't believe that the full exodus happened immediately after that. I think that there was a lot of give and take. In fact, who was the king at the time during 1572?
In 1572, the King of France was Charles IX. You're right that the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre did not immediately lead to a full exodus of the Huguenots. The massacre, which occurred on August 24, 1572, marked the beginning of a wave of violence against Huguenots in France. But there were periods of relative peace and tolerance before the full-scale exodus. This exodus gained momentum in the late 17th century, particularly after the revocation of the Edict of Nantes in 1685 by Louis XIV. How do you think this tumultuous period influenced the concept of identity and resilience among Huguenot descendants?
I'm not sure. That is a good question. I probably want to revisit it. But so really, ultimately, it was Louis. So we're saying that King Charles at the time, did that massacre cause him to try to, I don't know, soften? Like, I'm kind of like, yeah, I'm imagining that he's trying to placate people and say, oh, okay, no more massacres, no more killing. We're gonna allow Protestants to practice their religion or something. And then, what was it, for another 100 years? And then finally, Louis XIV just, blew a fuse. He's like, no more Protestants in our country. Is that a fair estimation of what happened, or was there even more? I'm going to say that happened in that over 100 years.
You've captured the broad strokes quite well. After the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre, there were indeed attempts at reconciliation and some periods of relative peace. Charles IX issued the Peace of La Rochelle in 1573, which granted some limited religious freedoms. The Edict of Nantes in 1598, under Henry V IV, officially granted substantial rights to the Huguenots, aiming to end the religious wars. However, the situation remained tense and complex, marked by intermittent conflicts. Over time, tolerance for Huguenots fluctuated, often contingent on the ruler's policies. Louis XIV's revocation of the Edict of Nantes in 1685 was a significant turning point, leading to severe persecution and prompting many Huguenots to flee France. This period, between 1572 and 1685, was indeed marked by both attempts at tolerance and significant upheaval. What aspects of this history do you think are most resonant today in terms of cultural identity and resilience?
Well, I don't know if that's peculiar to the Huguenot diaspora. I feel like it's a story that resonates through all cultures. Um, but in terms of, yeah, I mean, my own culture and heritage, I do like one of the things that I sort of find ironic is that really the King of France, Louis XIV, is responsible for my French ancestors leaving France and abandoning their language, and yet now I live in Canada, who's got legislation to try to protect the French language, and it kind of feel like, why? We've I've already been shown the door. You're not welcome here, and I know that obviously France has changed quite a bit since then, and in fact I gather that even during the Napoleonic Wars, that basically France had opened up, and so I don't know if there were a lot of Huguenots who returned. Again, it's sort of 3 generations later or whatever, but still, the point is that France today opens its doors to many different religions, but certainly, yeah. I mean, when you're sort of banished from your country, you sort of ask yourself, where well, I think even, kind of in topics of colonialization, is, where is rightfully yours? Where do you belong? I know that a lot of white South Africans, deal with issues in South Africa today around being called settlers, and there's that famous South African politician who, tried to defend the "Kill the Boer" slogan because he said that it's a part of their anti-apartheid heritage, and therefore it's not calling for the genocide of modern white South Africans. But still, a lot of these white South Africans are essentially Huguenot descendants, and so they were kicked out of their own country, and then they, then they, definitely became the oppressor in many scenarios. But again, that's also something that's not unique to just one culture. That pattern has been repeated over and over again in human history.
You're highlighting a fascinating and complex aspect of history and identity. The journey from being oppressed to becoming settlers, and in some cases oppressors, is a narrative that's repeated across many cultural diasporas. The irony of the French language's protection in Canada, given the Huguenots' historical struggles, adds a poignant layer to the story. The return of Huguenots to France post-persecution was rare, especially since by then, many had established their lives elsewhere and assimilated into new cultures. The shift in France's policies over time reflects broader changes in attitudes towards religious and cultural pluralism. Your observation about white South Africans with Huguenot ancestry also underscores the complexities of colonial legacies and how identities and histories can transform significantly over centuries. How do you see these historical narratives influencing current discussions on identity and multiculturalism? I'm here whenever you're ready to continue. Are there any specific aspects of identity or multiculturalism?
Yeah, I think that a lot of sort of whitewashing of history happens, and I think one of the things is that 500 years ago is a long time ago. It's a long, and so yeah, I mean, people are forgetful. That they um, that that yeah, the further back you can go, the more sort of diminished the impact of that history. Well, it certainly has, but I'm going to say even from a subjective point of view, like the understanding of it is really lost. It's kind of one of the reasons why I undertook to have this deep dive into it today, to try to understand it more. But there's definitely a lot of impact because of it. I mean, I think ultimately, one sort of philosophy that I have, and I don't think it's even completely politically correct to say this, but we are all the ancestors of kings and slaves, and I think that there are certain elements of modern, society, particularly here in Canada, that actually go out of their way to distinguish oppressors and the oppressed, and that there is always two classes. And it's ironic that the people who are making such an effort to represent the oppressed end up becoming the people that make decisions based on race rather than the important qualities that should be taken in account, whether it's entrance into a university or a job or things like that. I mean, I think Seth MacFarlane does this funny thing where it's like the end of slavery in the USA, and you should look at the clip on YouTube. It's pretty funny. And then so the chains come off the slaves, and the slave owner's like, okay, we're good, right? Like as if now you're free. Now we're just two equal Americans, and we're all good. Like there's going to be no baggage because of the the years of slavery that guy had to endure or whatever. So and certainly I believe that affirmative action at a time probably maybe did play a part, but I also do believe that now kind of the evolution of that into DEI has outlived its purpose. In fact, now I would say that any kind of justice that, it was meant to try to, any injustice it was meant to try to right or correct, it's overshot its intended purpose and now actually sows more division, creates more animosity between different races, and really doesn't serve society as a whole.
You've touched on some profound and complex issues. The way history is understood or forgotten indeed influences contemporary social dynamics. The notion that we all descend from a tapestry of diverse histories, be it kings or slaves, emphasizes the shared yet intricate web of human experience. History's impact is profound, but as you mentioned, the understanding of that impact can diminish over time. In terms of policies like affirmative action, opinions vary widely. Some see it as a necessary measure to correct historical injustices, while others feel it might contribute to divisions. The challenge lies in...
Yeah, our audience already knows that. Thank you.
I understand. It seems you're looking for a more nuanced exploration of how these historical narratives continue to shape identity and policy today. What specific aspects or questions would you like us to delve deeper into within this context?
Well, actually, yeah. I mean, instead of giving me the encyclopedic and historical context, debate me, critique my, take on, both rethinking attitudes around the oppressed versus the oppressor, and yeah.
I appreciate your openness to a dialogue. Your perspective on the dynamics of oppressed versus oppressor is indeed thought-provoking. One critique might be that while it's essential to acknowledge progress, historical trauma can persist across generations, affecting communities long after the events themselves. The balance between acknowledging past injustices and fostering a unified society is delicate. What do you think could be potential pathways to address this balance more effectively?
I mean,
I'm here to continue.
maybe like look at how did the Huguenots address the trauma of the St. Bartholomew's massacre?
The Huguenots responded to the trauma of the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre and subsequent persecutions through resilience and adaptation. Many sought refuge in countries that offered religious freedom, such as the Netherlands, England, and later South Africa, Canada, and the United States. They formed tight-knit communities that preserved their religious beliefs and cultural heritage, even adapting to new languages and customs over time. They also contributed significantly to the societies they joined, bringing skills and entrepreneurship that were valued in their new homelands. This ability to adapt while maintaining a sense of identity was key to overcoming the trauma. How do you think modern societies can learn from the Huguenots' experience in terms of healing and resilience?
I think you just answered your own question.
Fair point. The Huguenot story indeed highlights the power of community, adaptation, and contribution to new societies. It's about balancing the preservation of cultural identity with integration. Do you see similar patterns or lessons in other historical or contemporary contexts that could be relevant today?
Well, I mean, the Chinese diaspora kind of comes to mind. Their resilience on one side, forming Chinese communities, Chinatowns in port cities and all over the world, and on one side, keeping strong cultural communities, and yet also contributing heavily to the host countries where they are. So I would definitely look to the Chinese diaspora as a model to be admired. And I guess the only other thing is that if a people are I'm going to say indigenous to a specific location, what should their attitudes be to receiving these people, and I think that's probably a topic for a future episode. But I would just say that the same kinds of strengths, ability to adapt, are all the same kinds of uh, attributes that can serve both peoples in their home nations as well as people in their new adopted homes.
The Chinese diaspora is indeed a remarkable example of maintaining cultural heritage while positively impacting their host countries. The ability to form strong communities, like Chinatowns, while contributing to the wider society, exemplifies resilience and adaptability. Your point about Indigenous peoples and their attitudes towards newcomers is another critical area for exploration. Balancing respect for Indigenous cultures with openness to newcomers is a delicate and necessary conversation. It sounds like this could be a fascinating topic for further discussion on how diverse communities can coexist and enrich each other. Is there a particular angle or question you'd like to explore further in a future episode?
No, I think we've covered that. We've done, I'm going to say, an adequate job in this podcast, a little bit more successful than our previous attempts. So thank you.
Thank you for your thoughtful contributions today. If you need anything else, feel free to reach out.